Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News Weekend. The government of Manitoba will begin searching the Prairie Green Landfill, located a few miles north of Winnipeg, where it's believed the remains of at least 2 First Nations women are buried. Premier Wab Kinew made the announcement on Tuesday after meeting with the family members. The decision follows on the heels of the Jeremy Skibitsky trial, the man who admitted to killing the women. Sav Jonza has more on the announcement.
Plans to search the Prairie Green Landfill began several months ago, says Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew. Yesterday, his government approved a special environmental license to get things going. Kinew says the search will be conducted in a different way than what was proposed in previously released feasibility studies.
We're doing so for 2 specific reasons. One is that we've made a significant advancement in terms of identifying where we believe the remains are within the site. And the second is that we have found what we believe to be a better approach to searching the landfill material.
Kinew says the trial of Jeremy Skibitsky provided a clearer picture of where the remains are likely to be.
And they are actually closer to the middle of these cells rather than closer to the surface.
Kinew says they will need to excavate the top layers to get to material dumped on May 16th, 2022, when they believe the remains were deposited. This will now be done manually rather than through a conveyor belt system as originally proposed.
The reasons why we're proceeding with this manual search is that after having our team and our experts look into this, we have concluded that this is going to allow us to move forward in a much more robust fashion with a more thorough search with less downtime. If we use a conveyor belt system, if the belt breaks, the whole search comes to a stop. And we're trying to avoid that. The families have been forced to wait long enough.
Landfill searchers will be hired throughout the summer and receive extensive training. He says no new funding will be provided on top of the combined $40 million the provincial and federal governments has promised, but he says it will be enough. He says the search could realistically continue into 2026. Kinew wouldn't provide comment on if the Brady Road landfill will also be searched. Sav Jonza, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Family whose loved ones are believed to be buried in a landfill just north of Winnipeg are expressing relief that the search appears imminent. The family of Mercedes Myron spoke on Thursday at the site of the former Camp Mercedes near the Canadian Museum for Human Rights. Grandmother Donna Bartlett says an advisory committee is also being set up that could include the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs, the families, and Long Plain First Nation. Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew announced on Tuesday that stage 1 of the search is over. That included getting a budget and necessary approvals in place. Next up will be the construction of buildings, including a healing center and a trial search. Bartlett thanks supporters and the Premier for getting to this point.
It was a long 2 years. It should have never happened. But at least it's getting done, and I am so happy. My granddaughter is happy, Mercedes' sister, Brandy, her mom is happy. We're all excited that it's going to be done. We did not know how long before we get to bring her home, but we will get her home, and that's the most exciting part of it all. It started.
Families also had the chance to visit the Prairie Green landfill on Tuesday. Melissa Robinson is the cousin of Morgan Harris.
Just to let her know that, our promise to her is going to be fulfilled and that we were going to come for her. So it was a good feeling.
A federal court judge has dismissed a court challenge by the Innu Nation. The Innu leaders asked the federal court to review a memorandum of understanding between the federal government and the Nunavut Community Council in Labrador. Here's Annette Francis with more.
The 68-page decision was released yesterday, and so far both parties are claiming a win. Todd Russell, a former Liberal MP, is the president of Nunavut, or NCC, the defendants of this case.
This win was an affirming win, that in fact we do have a strong, on the face of it, case for Aboriginal rights. And so we want to be at a table to be able to give expression to those rights, to talk about what our needs and priorities are for our communities. And this court decision certainly paves the way for that to happen.
The NCC represents over 6,000 members who claim to be Inuit in Labrador. The Innu Nation filed for a judicial review of the Memorandum of Understanding the Liberals signed in 2019 between the NCC and former Crown Indigenous Relations Minister Carolyn Bennett. At that time, Innu Nation Chief Simon Poku said recognition of the NCC, who do not have Section 35 rights, is a threat to his nation.
A group who call themselves NCC, that they want to take our rights, they want to take our lands.
According to the court decision, the MOU is an agreement only. It does not recognize the NCC as an Aboriginal people under Section 35. Matt McPherson is a lawyer for the Innu Nation.
The decision confirms what Innu Nation wanted confirmed for all of the worlds to know and to be clear on, which is that the Nunatukeewit Community Council, or NCC, has never been recognized as an Aboriginal people under the Constitution, and they have never been recognized as having Section 35 rights.
Russell firmly maintains his organization legitimately holds Section 35 Indigenous rights.
I would say with all confidence that there is no other group in Canada, certainly not in Eastern Canada or Northeast Canada, that has such a strong prima facie case to Aboriginal rights as the Nunatukeewit Inuit. I would also say that we are in a very, very strong legal position, as this win is one of many that we have had in the courts.
Russell says after 5 years, it's now up to the federal government to make a commitment to get back to the table with the NCC. McPherson says the MOU has no legal effect in the Innu Nation and will continue to protect their rights.
Innu Nation will be watching what Canada is doing with NCC very closely and continuing to aggressively advocate to ensure that Innu Nation's rights and Innu Nation's, 8,000-year plus existence in Labrador is not threatened by a group of settlers who are pretending to be something that they're not.
Annette Francis, APTN National News, Ottawa.
We'd like to hear what you think about the court decision or anything else you'd like to get in touch about. Here's how to continue the conversation. If you have a news story you want to share, you can send us an email to news@aptn.ca. To read and watch our stories, go to our website. That's aptnnews.ca. You can also find us online on your favorite social media sites, including TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, and X. Well, 2 shelters in Montreal held a memorial to mourn the loss of over 30 lives, half of whom were unhoused and Indigenous peoples. APTN's Maricela Amador spoke with organizers who said multiple factors have contributed to this tragedy.
Jesse Blacksmith, April Blue Boy.
33 deaths over the last 3 years, many of them unhoused Indigenous women.
Monica Poasi.
In downtown Montreal's Cabot Square, it's an emotional scene as community members gathered to mourn lost friends and loved ones.
Today is about honoring them, having people share, having an opportunity for staff to come and work with the people who are grieving and help them to move forward so that they don't end up this way.
Nakuset heads the Native Women's Shelter of Montreal.
And we really need more services because this cannot continue.
She says the number of deaths around the Cabot Square community is alarming and criticizes inaction from all levels of government in addressing Montreal's homelessness situation.
Will there be an inquest into all these 33 lives, right? Can we do more of that to find out what the root causes is, as opposed to just counting them when they're alive and really not doing very much about it?
Tapia Apak from Igloolik, Nunavut has experienced homelessness. She's grateful for the opportunity to grieve.
It's been hard for me to think about him.
She says she came to pay her respects to people she knew and loved.
At first I didn't want to come here because I knew it was going to be hard for me to be here. But it's also very important because you get to feel the feelings of others.
Jeremiah Connors fell and hit his head. He never came out of the coma.
Attendees, who are part of the Cabot Square community, share memories of those they've lost.
April Blue Boy finally went home to her home community, but it didn't work out, so she came down here and died of an overdose.
David Chapman, the executive director of Resilience Montreal, says the housing crisis has made the situation worse.
Another factor is the increase in more dangerous drugs such as fentanyl. A third factor is the city of Montreal's approach and the approach more broadly in Quebec of clearing encampments.
Chapman explains people with no place to go are most likely to end up in dangerous circumstances.
It's both sad and extremely frustrating, because a significant number of the deaths on the board are unnecessary. One of the really common themes that I see is young Indigenous women who are afraid to go to the hospital.
He adds that every neighborhood in Montreal should have easily accessible resources for homelessness.
You see, there's a lot of young Inuit women, and these are the girls that usually just come out of youth protection. They're out of the system, they have nowhere to go. This park, has a lot of perpetrators that come to the park, and they're very vulnerable.
Nakuset hopes the government is watching, but she says she remains skeptical. Maricela Amador, APTN National News, Montreal.
A proposed budget cut in the Northwest Territories could mean bad news for midwives and those who seek their services. More on that coming up after the break. Welcome back. The midwifery community in the Northwest Territories is facing a big challenge, but they are fighting back, highlighting their contributions to families, the healthcare system, and the North in general. Our reporter Charlotte Moore-Jacobs has that story.
With 3 decades of practice under her belt, Indigenous midwife Leslie Paulette is working tirelessly, advocating amidst a proposed budget cut of nearly $1 million that would fund nearly half of all midwifery positions in the Northwest Territories.
And it's not for lack of interest. People do want midwifery services. It's not for lack of interest from midwives. Midwives do want to come and work here to help build this program. But there have been systemic barriers that have resulted in midwives really feeling not supported to implement the program the way, in many cases, they know how to do because they've done it before.
The proposed cuts affect 4 practitioner positions serving Yellowknife, Beshko, Dilo, and Detta, a territorial manager position, and a senior midwifery consultant within the Department of Health and Social Services. APTN requested an interview with the department. Instead, we received this statement over email. It cites challenges with recruitment and retention of staff and says existing midwifery services in Fort Smith and Hay River will not be affected. The NWT Association of Midwifery have been meeting territorial politicians to explain why the program has had its setbacks.
And we've had 6 midwives in positions in Yellowknife over the past several years. They were enthusiastic and optimistic about coming to work in the North. They understood the importance of increasing access for people in Yellowknife and in the small communities to get midwifery care. It can make a real difference in terms of improving outcomes and providing culturally safe care. So we had midwives who were really interested in coming. Unfortunately, we have lost all but one of those midwives. The others left because they were disappointed and frustrated that they were not really supported.
Some Yellowknife MLAs have spoken up, asking the health minister to reconsider.
Midwifery services in Yellowknife were planned out for the next 3 years to provide outreach to.
There's also been support from the public. On May 31st, a rally was held in Fort Smith and Yellowknife, and public testimonials have been circulating online, especially around the impact birth workers have on continuity of care and how Indigenous midwives can help reclaim traditional practices around birth. For Paulette, she says eliminating jobs will only deter Northerners from coming home to train when the midwifery community shrinks.
The focus is not on just serving Yellowknife, it's on creating a strong core and a presence of midwifery in the Territorial Referral Centre, but being able to reach out to communities and regions and being able to welcome clients from those smaller communities when they come to Yellowknife, to give them that option. Would you like to try midwifery care when you're here? You know, what can we do to support you?
The territorial government will vote on the matter this week. Charlotte Moore-Jacobs, APTN National News, Yellowknife.
Just as the school year is coming to an end, a Yukon First Nation education advocacy group has released new statistics surrounding graduation rates for Indigenous and non-Indigenous students. As Sarah Connors tells us, the First Nation group is pointing fingers at the Yukon Department of Education, accusing it of artificially inflating graduation numbers.
Here they come!
Last month, Yukon First Nations graduates walked across the stage to receive their high school diplomas. The Yukon Education Department says 71% of Indigenous students and 83% of non-Indigenous students graduated high school over an 8-year period.
Our next graduate, Dakota Jackson.
The department's numbers show Yukon's graduation rates are on track with the rest of Canada.
We need to start posting accurate data.
But an education advocacy group says those numbers are inflated. The Yukon First Nation Education Directorate hired its own team to analyze the territory's statistics. It calculated that over the same 8-year period, 47% of Indigenous students and 73% of non-Indigenous students graduated, and that number is dropping. The directorate says the territory is only counting students who make it to grade 12 with the potential to graduate, meaning grade 12 students with all required credits from grades 10 and 11. But the directorate included all grade 12 students in its numbers, not just the ones with potential.
I think the biggest thing is that if they're going to be publicizing that information, then let's make sure that it's an accurate piece of information.
The directorate's team also found 40% of Indigenous students entering grade 12 did not graduate over those same 8 years. Bennett says many Indigenous students struggle with the territory's education model.
They'd rather be out on the land, or they want to choose options where they can train outside of school and don't necessarily look at that certificate as a value right now.
The Department of Education said in a statement to APTN News, in part, we understand that calculating graduation rates for students who graduate within a 5-year period, or the typical amount of time to complete grades 8 through 12, only gives us one perspective. To capture more information about those who take a bit longer to graduate, we also report on the 6-year graduation rate. Bennett hopes painting a realistic picture of Yukon's graduation rates will help all students succeed in the long run.
Hopefully all of that information will bring forth some things that we can proactively work towards to bring change for our Indigenous students and improve things in the system.
Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
APTN has been showcasing poets this month for Indigenous History Month. Coming up after the break, we'll hear from Saskatoon's Colleen Charlotte. Welcome back. A new web series is debuting that is helping promote Michif to young children. APTN's Chris Stewart talked to the creator and the co-star of the show.
Oh, Tache Henry. Angelique, Monyami, Henry, Awa. This is my friend, Henry.
Christopher White and his team are excited about the upcoming web launch of his series, Michif Makers. In it, puppet cousins William and Angelique learn about Métis history and about the Michif language with the help of their animal friends.
Each episode kind of has a problem or a challenge that the children need to overcome. They usually try, they fail, as most children tend to do with things, but it's through the learning of a particular keyword or phrase that ties into an aspect of Métis culture or history that they're able to kind of self-actualize and resolve their problems and kind of grow as human beings, or puppets as it were.
White says it is targeted towards children 4 to 7 and combines entertainment with learning.
It's funny, it's engaging, we've got lots of music, a lot of slapstick, some good dialogue jokes there for the parents as well. So really it's about kind of pulling them in, making characters in a world that is relatable, that is fun, and finding ways to kind of sprinkle in the language.
Found you, mon frere!
You found me!
now where could Angelique be?
I don't know.
APTN couldn't turn down an opportunity to interview William, one of the co-stars.
I do the show with my best cousin, Angelique. She's funny and she's a lot of fun. And sometimes we have our weasel friends, Ermin and Bella. God, they're really funny too. And you know what? We also learn a lot too, which is a lot of fun. We have fun, but there's also a lot of learning we get to do. So people like Madame Bufflou and Lou the Wolf, they help teach us a lot and help us grow and learn a little bit more about our language.
The first 2 episodes debut this Saturday at midwifery.ca, with new episodes weekly, 5 episodes in total.
Well, I hope all of you young people watching out there really like our show. We put a lot of time into it, and I hope you have a lot of fun, just like we did. It's a chance to learn about the language, and whether you're Métis or not, you can learn a lot about the history of our people and how we see things and how we came to be.
The Stanley A. Milner Library in downtown Edmonton has a free screening on Saturday at 1 p.m. Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Edmonton.
Looks like a great way to teach the language. Well, all month we've been sharing submissions for our Indigenous History Month anthology series. Our featured poets have covered a wide range of experiences and topics. You can read through them all over at aptnnews.ca/Indigenous History Month. Today's poem comes from Colleen Charlotte in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. Here's her reading of Abrasive Love.
Abrasive love. That girl, she loved fiercely. Passion like plasma flowed through her veins. Her rage was spring-loaded from all the PTSD. She had over-sacrificed. She gave until it hurt her, almost to the point of no return, where there might be no rallying back, partial recovery at best. A love intervention was in order. Patience wasn't wearing thin, it was anorexic and anemic. The fuse is short, and it can't get any shorter.
Thanks for that, Colleen. Again, you can find those all over on our website. That is all the time we have for your APTN National News for this weekend. You can find much more and stay up to date by visiting our website, aptnnews.ca. And be sure to tune in Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time when Creason will have your first look at the day's news. I'm Dennis Ward. Marcy McGuich, thanks for being with us. Props to all the dads out there. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.